This Choircast podcast is brought to you by Brandon Dragon's new novel, Mr. Bingley, Just as a Gentleman Ought to Be, a Pride and Prejudice variation with a twist. In this story, we learn the hidden truth about the affable Mr. Bingley, who is much more than he appeared on first impression. Follow Mr. Bingley down a rabbit hole of intrigue and corruption as he fights to protect the country's most vulnerable alongside friends old and new, and find out if he can do it before he loses Jane forever. Find Mr. Bingley on Amazon now.
Hey heathens, you're listening to the Deadly Faith podcast where religion and crime collide. I'm Lacey.
And I'm Lola.
And this shit is gross.
Cross my heart, oh to die. Welcome to the dark side. Oh to die, oh to die.
Karl Denke. He's
Why
a
is it
Denke boy.
Said that way. Denke.
It's Polish, I think. Poland.
That's
He's from Poland.
Dank, bruh. Anyway.
Yeah. I am just now realizing as I'm starting this, I did not look up the correct pronunciation of a couple of the places. So just bear with me. And I'm going to be like, it was in Poland.
And it was in Poland. And then they were in Poland.
Yeah. And okay. So I'm just going to tell you right now before you listen to this episode, if you're eating, you probably want to stop.
She literally texted me that earlier. And so I'm concerned. I ate earlier. I'm good now.
And you also never eat when we're recording. So, but I was just
why would I? You want to hear me?
Exactly. All right. I'm just going to jump in with the trigger warnings. And let's dive into this shit hole that is Karl Denke. All right. Trigger warnings. Murder. It's somewhat graphic, but it gets graphic more with the next trigger warning, the cannibalism.
I knew it was going to happen, but still.
I know. And there's also mentions of suspected animal abuse. There's not actual graphic animal abuse or anything. There's just mentions of it. And then there is a suicide. So those are your trigger warnings. If any of that's too heavy, we'll see you next week. Take care of yourself.
Or maybe we'll see you after the October cases.
After the October cases.
We really picked the bloodiest, grossest ones.
We did.
It's like Carrie. I've never seen Carrie. I can't say that.
I haven't either.
I just know she's in the bloody dress and there's blood all over her.
Exactly.
Oh, it's so gross.
Yeah. For those that are still hanging out with us, let's just jump into this. All right. So on December 21st, 1924, Vince Oliver, a homeless man, arrived at a police station covered in blood. He claimed to have narrowly escaped an attack by a local resident named Karl Denke. The officers were initially very skeptical, given that Oliver was homeless and Denke's reputation was as a respected citizen in the community. So they weren't really believing what Oliver was saying. However, after Oliver received medical treatment, it was very evident that he had been attacked with an axe and he has sustained a pretty severe head wound. It was only needing stitches, so he didn't have to it didn't break a bone or anything like that. But
good.
It was still pretty severe. And the doctor was like, yep, he was definitely hit with an axe. So,
how do you determine that? What? How often do you get these?
Not the incision, but the wound was so long, that what else? I don't know if he said definitely.
I don't know.
I'm assuming it was that would make sense with what the wound he has. So
listen,
that's probably more.
I'm just... those signs that are don't do this, even though it's very don't touch the sparky electric things. And it's why would you say that? Because someone's done it.
Someone's done it.
I just wonder, has someone come in with an axe wound, doctor?
Yeah, probably. In this day and age, probably. Now, following treatment, Oliver was actually detained for 10 days under vagrancy laws. It was illegal to be a homeless person.
Why?
Illegal.
What?
Don't ask me. Despite the officer's skepticism, Oliver consistently maintained his story. He recounted that he had come to town seeking shelter and had been directed to Denke, who was known for offering refuge to vagrants. Now, I'm using the word vagrant because that is the word that's used in the history, and that's
I don't even know what vagrant means.
It's a homeless person. Vagrant is somebody who goes from town to town aimlessly looking for
a nomad.
Yeah, a nomad. But they have vagrancy laws, so that's why I'm using the word vagrant, because it's in historical times, it's
people experiencing homelessness.
Exactly. Yep. Now, Denke had invited Oliver into his home, offered him a place to stay in exchange for helping him dictate a letter, and Oliver agreed. he was expecting just like a simple task in return for a warm bed and possibly a meal. And this seemed like a huge win. I help you write this letter, get a roof over my head, get a warm meal, win, win, win. I'm coming out in the long run. This is great. But inside Denke's home, Oliver sat down and was asked to write. So random. I don't even know why. He told him to write, Albert, you fatty.
What?
I'm not kidding. That's like
Who's Albert?
I don't know who Albert is. The only one I can think of is Albert Fish. But that's
Poor
like,
Albert. Okay, well, never mind. Not poor Albert.
no, we can call that one fatty, even though he was like a skeleton. Anyways, Albert, you fatty. But as Oliver began to write, Karl picked up an axe and attacked him with it. The blow, he like attacked him at the head. The blow, rather than like knocking Oliver out, it glanced off of his head and lodged into the table, giving Oliver the chance to flee. Now, they did struggle back and forth a little bit, but Oliver was able to break free completely, and he staggered out of Karl's front door, and he was bleeding everywhere.
It's giving Psycho.
Yeah.
That's what it's giving.
Yeah. Now, a neighbor heard the commotion and came out to see Oliver in a horrific state and saying that Karl had attacked him. The neighbor, just like the cops, were initially very doubtful because Karl was seen as a wonderful member of the community. And this neighbor was like, nah, I bet you were the instigator in all this. I bet you were the perpetrator. So then Oliver himself had to then try to get away from the neighbor because the neighbor tried to apprehend him. So he had to get away from that
giving
neighbor.
Dahmer victims.
Yeah, right.
What is this?
And that's when he was able to make it to the police station.
Okay.
Now, I will say before we go any further, I am telling this story in the best way that I can. Some of these might be somewhat inaccurate or a little bit off, but this story, there are parts of it which I will get when I get to it. I'll say like this has been reported differently, but this is like the most common.
Was there huge media coverage on it?
No.
Okay.
No, this is like the cannibal you've never heard of. And we'll get into why. Now, with Oliver's severe head wound, the officers eventually decided to question Denke. During a formal interview at the police station, Denke did admit to attacking Oliver, but he claimed that it was in self-defense because Oliver had attempted to rob him. Although Denke's story to the police seemed and appeared to be very plausible, the police informed him that they would need to search his home for corroborating evidence. Upon hearing that his apartment would be inspected, Denke's demeanor drastically changed, and he got visibly nervous. So to complete the officer's investigation, they ended up placing Karl in a holding cell. They were like, you'll probably be out by morning kind of thing. Like, you're good. Like, but I should put you in a holding cell. Formalities. Am I right? Am I right? But inside, Karl's shitting bricks right now, okay? And then just a few hours after he was put in a holding cell, an officer went to check on Karl and found him dead in his cell.
What?
He had used a large handkerchief. Handkerchiefs back then were more like scarves. So it's not like a normal size scarf. Or handkerchief. It was pretty big. And he used it to commit suicide. And he hung himself. Yeah. So Denke passed away on December 22nd, 1924 at the age of 54, 64. We're not really sure. Somewhere in there. It's probably
what did
more
you
like
do?
In Zambique, Poland. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I'm so sorry. Now, the sudden death of Denke left many puzzled and little attention was paid to him. And the suspected attack on Oliver at the time was kind of just like pushed to the side. However, when the police later visited Denke's apartment to secure his belongings and assist his family with funeral arrangements, they discovered the horrifying reality of Denke's sadistic crimes and his dark, gruesome past. But before we get into that,
okay,
let's learn about Karl. Who is Karl? Okay. Karl was born on August 12th, 1870, ? The year of his birth has been reported different multiple times, but it is the most consistent year is 1870. And from the timeline of events and his age at death, I'm pretty sure it was 1870. So
Sure.
that's
I believe you.
year.
I'm not going to go look it up.
Yeah, that's the year we're just going to go with, okay? Now, as a child, Karl faced significant mental challenges and did not begin speaking until he was about 7 years old. Some accounts suggested that he was simply stubborn, while others indicated that it might have been due to a mental disability. His late development in speech made school very difficult, and he was often literally called an idiot by his teachers.
No.
That early 1900s day and age where the teachers literally just called you an idiot.
Hey guys, remember when we could just call our students idiots?
Oh, the days. Make school great again. Call kids idiots. That was a total joke. Please don't take that out of context.
No, it's satire. God.
Satire, guys. Satire. Although he improved academically once he started speaking, he continued to struggle with social interactions. Karl was described as socially awkward and pedantic. He preferred things to be done in a very specific way. He was very orderly in his way of doing things or how he wanted to organize something.
He had a system.
He had his little systems. You might not understand his systems, but he had his systems, and don't fuck with his systems.
I mean, I kind of get that.
Now, if you know anything about autism, then you are probably suspecting that Karl was on the spectrum, and you wouldn't be the only one. Many historians speculated that he was somewhere on the autism spectrum.
No, for sure. I literally, when you said he didn't speak till he was 7, I was like, nonverbal autism.
Nonverbal autism. Mm-hmm. And then he's socially awkward. Mm-hmm. And then he's very pedantic and likes things in a particular way. I mean, he's pretty much checking all the boxes.
You're teaching me a lot of big words today.
Pedantic. It just means pedantic means like very particular. That's literally the word that described him in childhood in like 2 different articles, like pedantic.
Wow.
Yeah, all these fancy Polands and calling kids pedantic.
What if they came up with a word just for him?
Yeah. So Karl appears to have grown up in a family that was either wealthy or at least comfortably middle class. Records indicate that the family owned a farm and possibly a few other businesses, though due to conflicting reports, the farm is the only one that we can really be certain of. Karl had 2 brothers, but because much of this story was lost for over 50 years, we do not know their names or the names of the parents. So 2 brothers, his parents, and Karl. That's all we know.
Do you know where he fell? Was he middle kid?
Young. He was a baby. I think he was the baby. Mm-hmm. Home life for Karl seems to have been challenging as he was known to frequently run away. On one occasion, he disappeared for 9 months. Not fucking kidding. 9 months before his brothers found and brought him back home. When he returned, the family acted as if nothing had happened.
What? Casual? No.
He was 9 months.
What were y'all doing for 9 months?
And if you think he ran away as a teen, you'd be fucking wrong. Okay? These runaways were like 9, 10, somewhere around there, age range. He was young. Because then it gets even crazier. At the age of 12, Karl left home for good after finishing elementary school.
Did they just not care about him or like him?
So there is not one positive account of Karl's childhood where it's like saying he was a wonderful kid. He was easy to get along with. He was funny. He was, he might have been quirky, but he was a, hard worker, whatever. There was literally nothing.
Wow.
So
not even a compliment sandwich.
Not at all. So I think if he was on the autism spectrum, if you are not aware or how to handle somebody on the spectrum, depending on where they fall on the spectrum, especially like in my experience with working with autistic children years ago, if you are nonverbal, and you're going to fall more on the like extreme side of the autism spectrum disorder and have more, not quirks, but like symptoms, challenges. Yeah. There you go. Challenges. You have more challenges, things like that. It's
just like they have no other way to express themselves. So
yeah,
sometimes expressing themselves comes out in maybe not the most positive way. I don't know.
And you have to see this, that from both perspectives, the family has no idea how to handle Karl if he's on the spectrum. And like, they don't get why he's different. Karl, on the same hand, doesn't understand why he's different. He's not like his brothers. And so it's just this, I can see, this is my just opinion, and I'm assuming a whole lot, but I can just see this building a lot of tension over the years, and Karl feeling like an outsider. And so his, response to that is to just run away. Let me see the world on the outside. And after them trying and trying and trying so many times, I think they just probably washed their hands of Karl and were just like,
wow.
Well, one bad egg in the 3. Call it good.
That's the thing.
That's the only thing I can think of.
They had multiple kids back then, so they could be like, there's a throwaway kid.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Even in the early 2000s or the late 90s, I was the throwaway kid.
You were the throwaway kid?
I'm just being facetious.
You're like, I'm just being an asshole.
Yeah.
Okay. So he runs away 12 years old. He's like, peace out. I dropped out. He finished elementary school, runs away. He then began working as a gardener's apprentice. Not sure what they did, but it was a thing.
And
it was actually the only job that he held for like a really long time. He held it from 12 years old until he was 22.
Oh my God.
He did this for 10 years.
Son of a bitch. I'm in. Okay.
Right? Following that, he worked at a butcher shop for a few years. And then at the age of 25, following his father's death, Karl's brothers inherited the family farm while Karl received a modest inheritance. I think Karl might have been a little perturbed that his brothers got the farm and he didn't.
I think I'd be the same way.
So he went and took his inheritance and he bought his own farm just a little bit away. And he's like, I'm going to start my own farm, fuckers. Right. Yeah. So he starts his own farm and then quickly realizes, I'm not cut out for this shit.
Oh, it's a lot though, man.
There's a reason my dad gave the farm to my brothers and not me, because I'm not good at it. So he sells this farm and then he ends up buying a 2-story home and rented out different parts of it to tenants. And so he became a landlord. On the property, Karl later developed a small garden where he successfully grew rhubarb. Apparently, he was very, very good.
Did you say rebar?
Rhubarb.
Oh.
Not rhubarb.
I'm thinking, what's he going to build a fucking interstate? Like,
it's rhubarb. I said rhubarb.
Like, or rebar. All right. We're all learning words today, folks.
And now I'm just imagining like a rhubarb garden. Like, what the fuck are you?
That's what I was thinking. Just metal poles with little green leaves coming off of it. The rebar's in full sprout.
He was an extreme DIYer, okay?
All right.
Sorry. Rhubarb. like rhubarb pie.
Yeah.
Okay. He's very successful at growing rhubarb. His property, also featured a sizable shed and a small pond that he actually constructed himself off to the side of the shed. So he's a little crafty man.
He's soy crafty.
As an adult, Karl was an active member of the local church.
No.
Yes, he was very, very, very active.
No wonder they like him.
He was regarded as a respected and upstanding citizen. Many affectionately referred to him as Papa Denke.
I hate it.
Right?
I hate that.
I do too. He was known for carrying the cross at many evangelicals' funerals. So a lot of people from his church, they die. He carries the cross. He's that man. And he was also the regular organ player at the church. He was there almost, every week. He's very consistent.
Suburban Jesus and musician. Got it.
Mm-hmm. The main issue people had with Karl was his lack of interest in dating or relationships.
Called it.
For years, he remained unmarried and showed no inclination toward pursuing romantic connections. And this seemed to just irk people. They're like, you don't have a wife.
Hold on. Why would they care though? Because I can see them caring when it's a woman.
Oh no, he needed a wife.
Oh, okay.
He needed to be wifed up. And he wasn't interested.
Gotta get someone to make an honest man out of him. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Apparently. Now, during this time, this is the end or around the time of World War I. Now, I'm going to read you a little excerpt. I really can't talk today.
Okay.
From history.com, because we have to talk about World War I for just a second so you can kind of understand the times that these peoples are living in.
Yeah, tell me more.
World War I was from July 28th, 1914 to November 11th, 1918. World War I was known as the Great War, started in 1914 after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. His murder catapulted into a war across Europe that lasted until 1918. During the 4-year conflict, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire, the Central Powers, fought against Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Romania, Canada, Japan, and the United States, which were the Allied powers. Thanks to new military technologies and the horrors of trench warfare, World War I saw unprecedented levels of carnage and destruction. By the time the war was over and the Allied powers had won, more than 16 million people, soldiers and civilians alike, were dead. That was an excerpt from history.com. So that gives you a little snippet of what World War I was. Now,
A violent time.
very violent. After World War I ended, the Treaty of Versailles placed the majority of the blame of the war.
The
on
what?
Versailles. I don't know how you say that.
The Treaty of Versailles.
Versailles. Why the fuck are there
It's
L's?
French.
Versailles. Why are there L's? Why are there L's in it?
L?
Okay, I thought.
You know
I
what?
thought
That's our
it was
next
Versailles.
t-shirt. Why are there L's?
Why are there L's? Okay, I thought it was Versailles, but then I was like, there's fucking L's in it.
No, it's Versailles.
So like, see, I hate this.
It's
I'm
fine.
dyslexic. I'm dyslexic, guys.
You know what? She has a good excuse.
I really
Why
do.
are there L's? I'm dyslexic.
I'm dyslexic. I will pull that card every fucking time. You
Okay.
bet your ass. Okay, after World War I, the Treaty of Versailles placed the majority of the blame for the war on Germany, imposing a staggering reparations bill of 132 billion gold marks. In the 1920s, this amounted to about 33 billion American dollars, and in today's money, that would be $500 billion.
Shut the
So,
front door.
They just said, you lost, and here's your bill, motherfucker.
Here's your. I'm gonna bill you for the war now.
I'm gonna
It's
bill you.
itemized, bitch.
It's itemized, bitch. I like that. Now, Germany had already been burdened with massive debt from borrowing to fund its war efforts. Now faced with an overwhelming financial strain, with no countries willing to extend further credit to Germany, they resorted to printing vast quantities of money, which rapidly devalued the gold mark. By November 1923, 43 billion marks were worth just 1 American cent. 1 American cent.
That's
For
how you fuck up
context.
an economy.
Now, to give you a better example, I am going to go through a handy little dandy chart I found.
Huh,
That
handy
goes
and little
through-
dandy.
It is little dandy. So in 1915, so this is still while the war is going on, 4.198 gold marks was worth 1 American dollar. So there's not a huge difference, you know. There's still a good difference, but not that bad. And then just a few years later, in 1917, still during the war, it had gone up to just $5.53 gold marks to an American dollar. And then we're going to jump to February of 1920, a handful of years later. 100 gold marks to every American dollar.
What?
And then for the next, from like 1921 to 1922, during those years, it fluctuates, but it's still steadily going up to now each American dollar, it's having 1,000, and then it gets later on to like 6,000, 8,000 gold marks to every dollar. And then it gets even worse.
No.
And in August of 1923, you had to have 900,000 to 11.4 million gold marks to every American dollar.
That's
and then-
not real life.
In January of 1924, the gold mark, you had to have 4.47 billion gold marks to every dollar, American dollar. So their hyperinflation was insane.
I thought inflation was
Dang.
bad today.
Oh, you don't know nothing for this. So as hyperinflation is spiraling out of control, the value of the money diminished daily. People rushed to stores with wheelbarrows full of cash only to find that prices had skyrocketed by the time they reached the fucking checkout. They said, you get your chicken and you run up to the cash register, and by the time you picked up the chicken to the time you checked out, the price has already gone up.
What? And that's why I love Aldi. Aldi, would you sponsor us?
I would love to be sponsored.
It's the only place I shop.
Seriously, I fucking love Aldi. The currency became so worthless that many turned to bartering and used the old banknotes for practical purposes like building forts, making toys, or even wallpapering their fucking homes. They're like, this isn't worth it.
Hard times, man. Hard times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bartering was the way to go. And so that's what people started doing. Amid this economic chaos, essential items like meat became extremely expensive and started to be considered a luxury item. As you can assume, many citizens struggled to make ends meet. Karl, during this time, overpaid significantly for that 2-story house. For the price he paid for that one house, he could have purchased 3 or even 4 other homes. His brothers were concerned about his financial decisions because they were like, you were taken advantage of, you were scammed. And so they sought to file for guardianship to protect him from further exploitation. However, when they consulted Karl's doctor, the doctor advised against it and warned that Karl losing control over his own decisions and finances would definitely lead Karl to become very violent. Now, we do not know why the doctor said this or where his reasons were coming from, but ultimately, Karl's finances did still remain under his own control. Due to the war,
feel like his doctor was probably on the right track.
He
know?
Yeah, he hit the nail on the head on that one.
That was a good doctor, I think.
Yeah. Due to the war and hyperinflation, Karl was forced to sell his home but continued to live in one of the units as a tenant and retained use of the shed out back. So he sells it. New owners are like, that's cool. You can stay. You can be a tenant. That's all fine. Now, he was struggling financially, and so he began to work on his brother's farm. However, his performance was very lackluster.
He's not good at farming. We've already established this. He can grow rebar, but that's it.
I'm never going to live that one down, guys.
No, it's so good.
It is good. But his brothers described him as lazy, often absent for days, and then prone to wandering off into the woods when he did show up. So, why are you here, Karl? Eventually, Karl did stop working on the farm, but his brothers continued to provide for him financially. Like each month, they just gave him a little bit of support. I am not sure exactly how long this support lasted or how much they were giving him. Now, despite his brother's financial support, Karl still needed additional income and became very resourceful. With permission to sell door to door and at local markets, he began producing jarred pickled meat.
What?
And
pickled meat?
Pickled meat. He said that it was pickled pork meat, and he sold it in jars. And
what does that mean? What does that mean? No. Don't just brush over pickled meat.
He took meat and he pickled it, and then he put it in a jar.
Have you ever had pickled meat? Have you heard of this before?
No, not at all.
I've never heard of this. I'm unwell right now.
He claimed that it was pickled pork meat, and it quickly gained popularity in a time when meat, like I had said, had become a luxury. She is just making the connection to the trigger warnings, and she's like, fuck me, no.
I had pickles earlier.
I like pickles. Pickles and pickled pork meat. That's different. It's different. I promise.
I'm fine.
Remember, meat is a luxury item. And now, here you have Karl offering pickled pork meat that's affordable. So, the townsfolk, they were loving it. They were like, this is Karl, your pickled pork meat. It is magnificent. Bring us more. Bring us more. He started selling not only to his town, but he was selling to towns around. He was very well known for his pickled pork meat. Okay. Karl also ventured into making and selling leather goods, which he sold alongside his pickled meat. In addition to his entrepreneurial...
I've got to go. I've got a blast. I've got a fucking blast.
I know. In addition to his entrepreneurial efforts, Karl became known in the town for his generosity towards vagrants. unhoused people. Those who were homeless or in need, he provided them with a place to stay and a helping hand. Despite his quirks, such as his soft-spoken manner, pedantic nature, and his overall eccentricities, he was generally regarded as a decent, upstanding citizen. Everyone loved Papa Denke. Couldn't get enough of him. Now, an interesting note, and I don't know where to put this in, so I'm just going to put it in here, is that Karl was not particularly close with his brothers. And although he had consistently declined invitations to his brother's home for dinner, he eventually accepted one not long before he was caught. Now, the dinner did not go well. Karl reportedly consumed 2 whole pounds of meat, and this pissed off his brother.
Oh.
You're eating all my fucking meat. And so they started to argue, and it resulted in the brothers and Karl severing ties with each other.
Oh, shit.
Over 2 pounds of meat.
Hey, well, meat's a big deal then, isn't it?
It's a luxury. And Karl's over here being fucking selfish. So he got pissed. Now, let's go back to the day.
What day?
Oliver is in jail.
Oh.
Karl has killed himself. And the police have arrived at Karl's apartment, ready to help, secure his belongings and try to kind of help the family come up with some funds to provide for the funeral. So they walk in.
I don't like the sigh that you just did.
Oh, it's bad.
It was so heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But they go to this apartment, and upon entering the apartment, the police were immediately struck with a foul odor. It's pretty disgusting.
It's a pickles.
Given that Karl sold pickled pork meat, they initially assumed the smell was related to his business. So, nothing to worry about. But, geez, how do you live in this, Karl? It's kind of rank. But in one section of the home, they discovered a makeshift meat processing area, which included tubs of fat, jars of meat and pickle brine, and skin stretched out for drying. Again, all related to his business, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. But as they looked closer, they saw that many pieces of the meat still had bones attached, and upon closer inspection, they quickly realized they were human. They were not pork.
Oh, I feel sick. Oh, God.
The officers were stunned by their findings and continued to search through the apartment, eventually uncovering a closet packed with bloody clothes. They also discovered a ledger with a detailed list of Karl's victims.
Yeah, he's autistic.
Right? The ledger recorded 30 known victims with an empty slot marked as number 31. Many speculate that this slot was intended for Oliver, who had managed to escape.
Oh, so he pre-planned.
He did. Yeah. Now, and we'll get into more of his planning in just a little bit. A report that was released 2 years later, because Karl's dead. So there's nobody to charge for the crime. And so the research and the testing and lab testing of all the evidence they end up finding in Karl's home, it takes time. It's not on the top priority,
Yeah.
So they released this report in 1926, and I'm just going to read parts of it because it's just easier. The first findings made in Denke's house during the search were bones and pieces of meat. The latter were in a salt solution found in a wooden drum. There were altogether 15 pieces with skin, 2 parts of the breasts, which is strongly hairy. The torso is cut through the middle, 3 fingers from above the navel. Its lateral limit is the front shoulder blade. In the piece of the anterior abdominal wall, the middle of the navel is visible. The remaining pieces belong to the sides and back. The largest is about 40 by 20 centimeters large. Particularly striking was a very clean anus with large parts of both buttocks.
I've got to leave the state.
I know. I'm so
I gotta spit. I gotta. Oh.
Yeah.
Gag.
Lacey,
what's wrong with you? Why did you find this case?
I know. The meat is brownish red and does not feel as if the body would have lost much blood. On the back, some soft bluish discoloration is visible, as well as livor mortis, which leads to the conclusion that the disassembly of the body took place several hours after the death. There is no evidence of vital reactions of the bodies to the cuts made, which means that the latter were not made while the victim were still alive. Nevertheless, some skin and muscles from the necks were missing, as well as extremities, arms and legs, head, and sexual organs. Lesions could not be determined, nor the nature of death or the tool of the crime. In 3 medium-sized pots filled with cream sauce, some cooked meat, partially covered with skin, and human hair was found. The meat was pink and soft. All pieces seemed cut from the gluteal area, the butt. One pot had only half a portion. Denke must have eaten the other piece short before being arrested.
Okay, so here's the question,
Mm-hmm.
the overhanging question for me. Is this a means of survival, not just in like his own physical,
His own personal
state,
survival,
but also financial survival? Is it
Great
this,
question.
or are you just that sick?
Mm-hmm.
Or a little bit of both?
Karl's dead. So your guess is as good as anybody else's in this.
It's just for the time, if meat is a luxury and like, it's hard to sustain off of meat if you are used to it.
I lean more towards, I lean towards both, but more towards it was such a hard economic time.
Uh-huh.
I think
I don't know what it was like. So I can't identify with this.
Right. But just knowing how much like money was like, didn't mean a whole lot, like you had to have something to barter, and like Karl has nothing to barter.
And he has no skills besides, well, you do have gardening.
Mm-hmm.
However,
but it's also a really hard skill, and we know that he's lazy.
Yeah. He's like, well, you're not lazy. He's not that lazy.
But gardens can die. Gardens are unpredictable.
That's true. And it's not a year-round thing.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay.
And so
we've got multiple factors. I get it.
I think the wrong dots just connected, and he saw an easy opportunity to sustain not only his life, but also barter for different other things that he did.
Horrific.
And I think he was just a little fucked up because like,
oh yeah, for sure.
In his ledger, we'll find out like he kept meticulous details about his victims. And so it's like,
do we know like all the victims' names and like
we don't know their names.
Oh, okay.
Those were, I think, lost to history. But I think at the time we'll get into that.
Okay.
We're gonna get ahead. Now, I am also going to read another little section where it talks about like all of the bones that were found, because they found a shit ton.
Oh God.
In Karl's home. So
what do you do with them? What do you do?
Apparently, yeah, right. In the third pot were found numerous pieces of human skin and parts of the aorta in a gelatinous mass.
Stop. Don't go a step further. I'm not ready yet. Hold on.
She's like, I have to control my gag reflex at the moment, guys.
Go on.
A bowl on the table in his room was filled with amber-colored fat that appeared to be human. Biological test gave a weak positive result of the presence of human protein. In the shed in which the meat pieces were found was also a barrel full of bones that were cleaned of tendons, muscles, etc., that most had been priorly cooked. The investigation initially revealed the existence of 6 forearm bones, which means that they belonged to 3 people at least. Other traces were found behind the shed. A part of a leg remained in the pond that Denke had dug many years before. And also skeletal pieces were uncovered in the local forest. Here is the full list of what has been sent to us for examination. This part isn't gross. It's just listing off all the body parts they want. So
I took off my fucking headphones for a little bit of that. God.
Disgusting.
I'm gonna throw up.
I know. I told you this was gross. I gave you a very clear.
Why do you have to say gelatinous?
I know, that's what they did.
And the amber cut. Why do you have to describe it in such detail?
I can see it. I don't want to see it.
The smell. Okay. Oh, the smell.
Trust me. Now, this is what they found. They found 16 femurs, of which 1 pair of remarkably strong ones, 2 pairs of very thin ones, and 6 pairs and 2 left femurs, 15 medium-sized pieces of long bones, 4 pairs of elbow bones, 7 heads of radii, which is just like a cut-off portion of the top of the radius, 8 lower parts of the elbow, which I think they just mean lower parts of like your forearm bones.
The arm? Okay.
I don't know why they listed it like that. It was really weird. A pair of upper shin bone, a pair of lower elbows and radii, of which extremities were still remain and well connected. Oh shit. That's gross. A pair of upper arms and a pair of upper arm heads. I think when they say
upper arm head, like shoulder?
No, I think what they mean is when they say upper arm heads is you have heads to your bones, like they're literally called the
okay,
head.
yeah.
And so the ones that have like a knob, there's certain parts in there that are called the head. So I think that's what they're referring to.
Oh.
Is the head, not the actual your head. Mm-hmm. A pair of collarbones, 2 shoulder blades, 8 heels and ankle bones, 120 toes and flanks.
What's a flank? What is that?
So you have your phalanges and your flanks.
Oh, okay, okay.
Phalanges, your flanks are your toes, basically.
Gotcha.
That's all the toe bones. Mm-hmm. 65 feet and metacarpal bones, 5 first ribs, and 150 pieces of ribs.
God. Yeah. How many bodies is that total?
So that's
we've just got a lot of pieces.
We're going to get into
different.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's so many, but not everyone's complete. There's not complete full sets.
I don't think they were able to put anybody together. Yeah.
You could start, but you'd never finish.
So no. Considerably more revealing was Denke's dental collection.
No.
We received a total of 351 teeth. These were found in a money bag and in 2 tin boxes on which pepper and salt were written, as well as in 3 paper bags. Now that was the end of the report section I'm reading right then. So they took these teeth and they examined them, and they estimated that one of the victims was no older than 16. 2 were in their 20s or 30s. 1 was in their 40s. And then the remaining victims were all senior citizens.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. And they have, I think I say this later on, but I'll say it again right now. They assumed that in his ledger, there's 30 victims. And then the 31 slot is empty. So they can confirm at least 30 victims. But after they looked at all of the bones, there's possibly upwards of 40, if not more. And an official number has never been verified.
Why wouldn't he write them down?
That's why I think it was probably closer to 30. But
if he's that meticulous,
or they lost a ledger. Also, a lot of this case was lost to history, and it's taken a while to get it put back together. So
it's past hands.
Yeah.
Several hands, maybe.
Now, like I said earlier, in addition to selling his pork pickled meat, he also sold leather goods.
I have to leave. I've left.
Okay, but this one is there's one part that it made me laugh. I was like, what the fuck? This is so bad. But also funny. In addition, the investigation revealed that Karl had crafted 3 pairs of suspenders.
No.
Entirely from human skin. Upon closer examination, it was determined that some of the skin came from the pubic area and even contained pubic lice, including the pair of suspenders that Karl was wearing when he committed suicide.
Oh, God. Why didn't she? Never mind.
He was wearing human suspenders covered in pubic lice.
He said, for sure, I'll help you guys out. I'll come in for a question.
Let me bring my...
You just wear that? That's not an accessory, Karl.
God damn it, Karl. Right? There's no
men.
Men.
Right?
Jesus. Additionally, they found laces made from human hair and pieces of skin that had been treated like you would treat leather. And they were sewn onto rags. Not really sure what he was doing with that. The only thing I can
Sewn
think
to
of,
rags.
they were sewn to rags. So the only thing I can think of is like, have you ever seen like women like crochet things that like have a loop where you can like loop it onto your oven, right? And then they sew the bottom to the rag, so then like it doesn't fall off.
Yes.
That's the only thing I can think of is like something like that. But like, who knows? This was in the 1920s, so who knows? Now, I'm going to read one more little section from this report, and it goes into like the IDs and stuff and like what they found with the ledger. Quote, a large number of ID cards and private papers of several persons were found in Denke's room, as well as account books on revenue from the garden, on working hours, and so on. They were relatively well managed and clear. More attention was attached to some loose sheets of paper on which names of 30 men and women appeared. In front of every name, there is a date, probably the date of death of the person. At number 31, there is only a date. The record is chronological. Numbering starts only at number 11 in case of women. Only the first name is indicated. The notes for men are much more detailed, usually with date of death, place of stay, and status of the person concerned. The assumption that this is the list of victims is justified by the fact that ID cards found in Denke's room belong to people whose whereabouts could not be identified otherwise. By the appearance of the sheets, we can assume that the list had not been made in one day, meaning the list was ongoing. And so these sheets were loose papers, and they could only find ones that started at 11. So that's why they're assuming that there was 30 victims, but based off of the evidence that they found with the bones, it shows there's probably more. So that's why I was saying, like, maybe he misplaced this one and put it on a different paper. Who knows? On one side of the sheets are the initials of the name, followed by a number, which most likely indicates the weight of the person concerned. On another slip of paper next to a name stands what follows: dead, 122. Naked, 107. Disemboweled, 83. This last figure is then repeated next to the name of the person concerned in the last table. So he had this whole just like fucking spreadsheet thing going on with this. And what most historians and investigators assume is that this sheet means the person weighed 122 pounds at death. And then when they were naked, they took, like, Karl took all the clothes and everything off. They weighed 107 pounds. I know that sounds like a lot difference, 122 to 107, but you have to think these are homeless people. So they're probably carrying a lot in their pockets. They're probably carrying lots of layers, shoes, all that.
Headwear.
And then I think the disemboweled 83 is pretty self-explanatory. He disemboweled them, weighed them, they weighed 83.
Why are you weighing them? What, is this an experiment?
Yeah.
Okay, this is not just for survival.
See what I mean?
Yeah, no.
Like the only thing
fucked up, man.
is like he's trying to track how much weight he has in order to like be able to sell it. But still, this is very
that's
meticulous.
Some of it just seems
autistic.
not necessary for if that's what you're.
But we have to remember.
Why are we even having this conversation? It's humans.
I know.
It's people.
I know. Now, it is clear to everybody that the pickled meat Karl sold in town was not pork, as he had claimed, but rather the meat from his murder victims. Once this information became public, sales of pork and other meat plummeted. Everyone freaked the fuck out, justifiably. And this ended up leading to an additional economic setback in the local areas. So they're like, well,
they can't catch a break.
They can't. No, they can't. No, they can't.
It's either war or it's Karl.
It's one of the two.
That's what I'm going to blame things on now.
Fucking Karl. I say that all the time. But
fucking Karl.
Now we have like a really good reason to say it.
Man, we're getting so many catchphrases just out of this one case. God.
Doctors also reported a rise in stomach illnesses following this horrific revelation.
I was going to say, who all got really sick after this?
Right? Because I would be vomiting and I'd have diarrhea forever because my anxiety gives me the anxiety poops. And you can bet your sweet ass I'd be anxious finding out I ate fucking humans. What?
Not only that, think of all the bacteria in a human. And then he's in a makeshift, or he's doing makeshift meat processing.
Yeah. And he had been
I don't care if
doing
he's meticulous. I don't believe that we didn't learn to start washing our hands.
The FDA would not have approved this facility. And that's even if it was animal meat. I'm not. No, they would not have. But he also was doing this for like a couple decades almost.
Oh my God.
He didn't do it for a long time.
This isn't real life. Oh God.
Yeah. And I couldn't confirm this because I looked for it, but I couldn't find it in any of the research that I had read. But apparently there was even a wedding that loved his, a bride that loved his pickled meat so much.
Catered?
He catered her wedding. Oh. I know.
I sound like Schmidt. Oh, he's a bottom. Oh, he catered?
Now, why was he not caught sooner? Okay, let's talk about that. After his death, 2 survivors managed to escape but never reported their attacks. It is speculated that they avoided contacting the authorities due to the vagrant laws in place at the time. After Karl was apprehended, these survivors came forward and revealed their experiences, describing how Karl had used the same ruse, offering to help them if they helped him dictate a letter before he actually attacked them with an axe. There were few reports that he tried to strangle them, but for the most part, he used the axe, from what we can tell. Also, let's talk about that smell, because that was pretty foul, pretty fucking foul. And remember, he lives in a 2-story home, but he lives in one of the units. So there's other people living in this home.
What did they think? Yeah.
Right? Karl had a story. So Karl's pickled meat was revolting. And they would go knocking on his door like, hey, Karl, it fucking smells.
It stank. Something's up under the house.
It's rank as fuck, dude. What the fuck are you doing, right? And he explained to his neighbors that it was a byproduct of the pickling process and that he needed to do it to treat this mysterious illness he had. Ooh.
He said, I have bungle dingles. Parietas.
Exactly.
That's what he said.
That is a historical comment right there. Yeah. Now, it's uncertain whether Karl directly told his neighbors this next detail or if it was just local gossip, but it was rumored that he claimed he was pickling dog meat, believing that the dog itself contained something that could help with his illness.
It doesn't.
So, yeah.
It contains the gospel and it doesn't help you.
No, at all.
It won't reach someone like you.
If Karl didn't directly tell them this, it seems that his neighbors might have speculated that he was killing dogs given the scarcity of meat during the economic hardships and the presence of stray dogs around town. Now, one neighbor even reported seeing Karl dumping buckets of blood behind his house.
Guys, say something.
But he goes, I just thought it was animal blood. I didn't think much of it. No, sir.
It's never animal blood.
Humans. Other tenants heard hammering and sawing very late at night and presumed that it was Karl working on his leather goods or butchering pigs or dogs for pickled meat. That's what they thought. Despite the gravity of the crime, it received only minimal coverage in the newspaper. It was overshadowed by the emergence of another serial killer in the headlines.
Oh.
And we'll talk about this other serial killer, but also fun, not so fun fact. Statistics show that Germany had more cannibals than any other region during the first half of the 19th century.
No way.
Not fucking kidding.
Oh my God.
So this leads to their economics was trash, man. They went into World War I and came out in debt and then handed the biggest bill you can fucking think or imagine.
I've got to ask Andrew about this because he knows all about that German shit.
Now, this is interesting. I'm just going to throw this random note in there. They did end up paying off that bill. It went...
They did?
It got lowered and then they stopped paying it during World War II. And then it went through some I don't know. I'm going to say remodels because I can't I can't think of the right
Restructure?
word. There you go. Restructure. I'm like, what word am I looking for? But they made their final payment in 2010, and it was $197 million payment.
Wow.
And they finally paid it off. It took over 50 something years, but they finally paid it off. Or no, 75 years, something like that. Because they got it in like 1920s.
That's insane.
Somewhere in the early 1920s. I can't remember. No, 1919. I think it was 1919. So long ass fucking time.
Wow.
90 years, almost 90 years. Jesus Christ. A long time. So who's the serial killer that's in the headlines taking Karl's fucking thunder? Okay. This was Friedrich Heinrich Karl. So he was called Fritz Harman. Also, he was also a Karl. I'm like, what? Don't name your kids
Too
Karl.
many Karls.
Too many. Now,
Is it Karl with a K or a C?
They're both Karls with Ks.
Okay, well, that's why.
It's 'cause
I've
they're
only
killers.
ever known troublesome Karls that started with a K.
You know what? In my experience, if your name is Karl and it starts with a K, you're a killer. So, like, it's just not a good thing. Just don't do that to your kid.
Ooh.
So he was a German serial rapist and serial killer known as the Butcher of Hanover, or the Vampire of Hanover, and the Wolfman, who committed the sexual assault, murder, mutilation, and dismemberment of at least 24 young men and boys in the city of Hanover between 1918 and 1924. So he got the name the Vampire of Hanover because of the way that he liked to murder his victims. He would literally bite them in the neck and rip it out many times.
Oh,
taking
that's like
the person's Adam's apple. Yeah.
okay. That is giving Rick. What's his name?
I don't know. I
The
was gonna
Walking
say Rick-
Dead.
Oh.
Oh my God!
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I get what you're saying.
It's
Mhm.
giving Rick Grimes.
Rick Grimes. Yeah. So he was caught, or he died in April of 1925, but he was caught in 1924. He was caught the same year
Short-lived.
Karl was.
Mm.
And so he took the limelight.
Overshadowed him.
Yeah, and he was
because-
alive to be able to like ask questions and,
Wow.
keep the story in the headlines. Karl was just fucking dead. So,
He was just friggin' dead.
yep. Now, Karl Fritz Harman, the Vampire of Hanover, he was found guilty of 24 of the 27 murders for which he was tried. Harman was sentenced to death by beheading in December of 1924, and he was subsequently executed by guillotine. I was going to say guillotine in April of 1925. And all of that information that I said about him was from, most of it was from Wikipedia. So, like I said, statistics show that Germany had the most cannibals. Why?
God.
I don't fucking
If you're
know.
German, right into us.
I'm so sorry. It had
Tell us
to have
more.
been, it had to have been the hard economic times. I'm just saying.
Hard times. I've never been in such hard times before. Also, hard times now. We have canned meats.
Mm-hmm.
We have canned goods.
We do. Yeah.
So,
Now I thought I put this in here, but I guess I missed it, or I can't remember. But when his brothers found out that what he did, and he, butchered and pickled meat, they weren't surprised.
What?
Yeah.
What did you do?
They said that made sense because Karl had a deep, addiction to meat, basically. Like, he loved meat his whole entire life. So
Okay.
So there could be multiple reasons. He had an addiction to meat. This was an easy way to get it. Meat was a luxury. He couldn't just afford to go buy it. And this way, it was free to him, and he made money off of it.
And he wasn't getting caught because
he was.
They were
vagrants.
people experiencing homelessness.
Exactly.
So they wouldn't be reported as.
Mm-hmm. And his house was near the train station.
Oh, so a lot of them.
And so he would actually go to the train station. He would pick up, homeless people, ask if they needed help, and get them to come back. And my question is, neighbors, you saw all these men walk into his house and never walk out.
Maybe he did it at night, though.
But still, they heard banging and sawing and all. Like, what?
How did you not hear screaming?
I don't know.
Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Now, for Karl's home, for decades, the new owners of the property ended up continuing to find bones scattered around the set.
God.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And due to the limited media coverage, Karl Denke's story faded from public memory until 1980. During that year, a university researcher found multiple photographs that, upon closer examination, appear to be connected to cannibalism. Further investigation and discussions with local journalists led to the rediscovery of Denke's forgotten story. And then in 1999, the Cannibal from Mozambique Museum exhibit was curated by a professor who had unearthed the story from old archived newspapers. After delving deeper, she persuaded the mayor to approve the exhibit. Initially hesitant due to the concerns about glorifying such horrific crimes, the mayor, he ultimately supported the exhibit, recognizing that it had major potential to attract much needed tourism to their struggling economy.
Some money.
And that is the story of Karl fucking Denke and his Denke little ass.
And his Denke ass.
Fucking Karl.
He literally smelled. His whole place smelled, and also just a smelly soul.
Yeah. It was.
Okay. Man, I have conflicting feelings about this.
I know, especially when you find out that Germany had...
I mean, it's never okay. Cannibalism, murder, that's never okay. Hurting anyone, that's never okay. Historically, it's known to happen in hard times.
But to the extent
I'm not saying it's right.
Took this,
yeah,
it feels like there was underlying
for sure
on top of the economic hardships. But we'll never know.
There are vegetarians.
Mm-hmm. For a reason, I'd become a vegetarian after this. I'd be like, sorry. Or I
enjoy veggies more than meat, personally. I'm just not a meat person. It's okay, and I'll eat it, but I much prefer a veggie.
I would only eat what I hunted myself. That's I would I don't trust.
No, yeah.
I don't trust nobody after that.
Yeah. Well, dang.
Anyway, sorry about that. That was a crazy one.
Sorry.
He's actually been on my list since the very beginning of us doing this show.
I was going to say, I've seen his name before.
Yep, I had him on the list. It's Karl Denke, the evangelical cannibal. That's what I had him on the list as.
Excellent.
Yep.
All right. Are we ready for palate cleansers?
Yes.
So that we can drop our shoulders, unclench our jaw,
and
all that stuff.
Relax our buttholes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice visual. Do you have your palate cleanser, or do you want me to go first?
Yes. I'll go first. Sorry.
Okay. I'm wait, I asked you 2 questions.
Yes. A 4-year-old shattered a Bronze Age jar in museum. Now he'll get to see how experts restore it. This is off the Good News Network. So, from Haifa, Israel, comes a story that will twist your insides. A 4-year-old knocked over a Bronze Age vase that dates back to 3,500 years ago. His father didn't see the vase. Him and his wife and son, they just kept going, and son accidentally crashes into it, and they were just in shock.
When I tell you, I had a full-blown panic attack.
He said, my wife grabbed our son to take him outside and calm him down and explained that, it was not okay what happened, but calm down because he starts freaking out. But the tale took a happy turn. Despite being told the vase was exceptionally rare, being that it was found intact and not in pieces, the museum officials responded with poise and gentleness, saying that the museum is not a mausoleum, rather than a living place open to families and accessible.
Aww.
In fact, the museum has stated it wants to use the incident as a teaching opportunity, and it asks specifically for the family, and most importantly, the son, to come back and see how the staff will put it together. The jar was most likely originally intended to be used to carry local supplies like wine or oil. It predates the time of the biblical King David and King Solomon and is characteristic of the Canaan region on the eastern Mediterranean coast.
Wow.
So
that is like grace, extending the grace, being understanding.
I mean, it's just created an opportunity. Like, not every mistake has to be classified as a mistake, and it can be classified as an opportunity. So.
Exactly. And I love that. Good job, museum, whichever you are. I can't remember your name. Good job. My palate cleanser is about the book I found at school today because I'm pretty fucking stoked to dig into this.
Oh my God. Will you please read the dedication page too?
Yes,
okay,
I will.
Thank you.
So I was at school studying, and I was actually not studying. I was doing work for the podcast for tonight. And I walk out, and our library has this like rolling cart with a bunch of books on it. And it has a sign like take a book, leave a book, donate a book, whatever you want. And so I was just like randomly looking at them because one of them caught my eye, and it was like a Pampered Chef, like old school Pampered Chef, like recipe book. And so it kind of just like made me laugh. But then I'm looking through the books, and this one, I see the title really big, and it says The Faith Healers. So initially I pick up the book and I'm like, what is this shit? Is what I'm thinking. Cause I'm like thinking I'm going to be very cynical. And then I open it up and I read the like about, and I'm just going to read you a little bit of it. And then I'm going to read you the dedication. Cause like, holy shit. It says, in coliseums and auditoriums across the world, thousands of times each year, self-styled faith healers carry out a shameless deception, pretending that they can invoke divine help to cure sickness. Instead, they prey upon the sick, taking their dignity and money in exchange for false hope. James Randi, internationally known as a magician and investigator of claims of alleged paranormal abilities, has compiled a damning indictment of such charlatans. They hyphenated the word, so I was having to put it together. Charlatans. It is a story of deception and greed on the part of many healers and evidence of the gullibility and misplaced faith of their victims. Astonishingly, clever tricks used by some of the subjects of this book are revealed for the first time, and these disclosures are supported by strong evidence gathered by Mr. Randi and a team of colleagues over 4 years of careful investigation. So
it's an expose.
It's an expose. I read that and I went, that's mine. I'm taking this. And I get to the car and then I read the dedication. Guys, this broke me. I know this is a palate cleanser, but still. It says, there was a small boy on crutches. I do not know his name, and I suspect I never will. But I will never forget his face, his smile, his sorrow. He is one of the millions robbed of hope and dignity by charlatans discussed in this book. Wherever and whoever he is, I apologize to him for not having been able to protect him from such an experience. I humbly dedicate this book to him and to the many others who have suffered because the rest of us began caring too late.
That last sentence just tears you open.
Yeah. And the foreword is by Carl Sagan himself.
Yeah.
I'm pretty fucking excited to dig into it.
What a good plug.
I know.
Nice.
And it was written in 1987. I was like,
it's
a treasure. I'm excited. Who knows? Maybe we'll do a fucking case on it because
hell yeah.
They did lie. Like, I'm sorry, this is a lie. They know what they're doing is false, and they're taking these people
for sure.
Giving them false hope. You know, that could be false advertisement, bitches. We can find a crime.
Anytime.
Anyways, that's the case of Karl Denke. I'm sorry. I hope it didn't make you throw up. If it did, take some Pepto. Yep, because that's all I got for you.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning in for another spooky episode, our Halloween edition. With that, please stay safe, stay skeptical,
and steer clear of the cultish carousel. We interrupt this episode with a message from our sponsor. If you've ever deconstructed your faith, you know it's not easy. But just imagine if you could have people to guide you through the process.
That's right. People like Jem Palmer, Kristen Dumez, author of Jesus and John Wayne, Jennifer Knapp, Brad Jerzak, Brian Zond, Paul Young, author of The Shack, and more. Well, if you head over to choiracademy.com and register for Square 2 using the promo code LOLA, you'll get 10% off the regular registration cost of this awesome course and community just for being a fan of our show.
All links can be found in the show notes. Again, that's code LOLA, LOLA, for 10% off the Square 2 course.
Also, heathens, if you're enjoying the show so far, please remember to subscribe wherever you're listening. Like, follow, and join our Patreon community. $5 a month, and you can have access to our exclusive potty podcast where we shoot the shit, talk about whatever the fuck we want to. We'd love to have you over there. Deadly Faith is brought to you by Choircast Network. It's produced by Lacey Bean and Lola Robbins, and audio engineered by Eric Howell. Thanks for listening.